Welcome to Parsha in My Life, Monday night Parsha in My Life class. This is a class for Parsha's Vayishlach. Um, Vayishlach, very, 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 very powerful and phenomenal, exciting Parsha to learn. And the themes of the Parsha are the unification or the encounter of Yaakov with his brother Esav, and the aftermath of that encounter, the reconciliation, at least temporarily, between the two brothers. Basically, Yaakov returning to the land of Israel. In a sense, the whole parsha is very much reminiscent to the times we're living in right now, because it's Jacob ending the exile. He was exiled from the land of Israel. He had to run away, and that's symbolic of the Jewish people going to exile. Yaakov's return to the land of Israel is very much referring to the end time when the Jewish people, all of us as we stand now, returning to ending the exile and transitioning into the Geula. And therefore the lessons of Parshas Vayishlach are very, very potent and very much in sync with our times. So let's see if we can find a very, very powerful lesson regarding ourselves and what we are living through and what our focus should be at this time. So as Yaakov is completing is readying himself for his encounter with his brother Esav, we all know the famous the big story of the parsha, how Yaakov has an encounter with the angel of Esav. The verse describes that Yaakov is it's nighttime. And this is like the night before he was going to meet his brother. He was scared. He was worried. He sent a huge bribery gift to his brother. He also split his camp up, as the verse says, into two camps, kind of to set himself up strategically, militarily for his encounter with his brother. He was also praying, and then he had a night, a night in between his encounter, and the Torah describes a very dramatic event. So here he's moving his family in the dark, it looks like. And he's moving his family, and they're crossing a river crossing called Mavar Yabok. The Mavar of Yabok, which is I guess a river crossing. He's helping his family. Looks like the river was not necessarily on a very low tide or low run. The water could have been a little high, and the family and the sheep and all of his possessions needed help. So as Rashi says, Yaakov was standing in the river and he was helping everybody move across the river. Then after everybody was on the other side of the river, at night, I was wondering, how do you do that without a flashlight? Maybe there was a nice moon casting a light where they can see, or maybe they had some kind of fire assistance. But this is the middle of the night as they all move over to the other side of the river. Yaakov has quite an estate already. Not an estate, real estate, but he has a fortune. He has 11 sons and one daughter, 4 wives, and then a whole host of servants and maids and tons of flocks of sheep. So he's moving this all over to the other side of the river. And then the verse describes that Yaakov remained alone. Vayavasar Yaakov levado. Yaakov remained alone. Why is he alone? So Rashi says Yaakov remained alone because he remembered after he crossed everybody, and it could be they walked already a little bit past the area, but he remembers that he forgot something on the other side of the river. What was it that he forgot? These little jugs, clay jugs, which is some containers, which is kind of a silly thing to go back for. But our great patriarch Yaakov decides that he has to go get them, even though they're small little things. And he's a wealthy man. Why does he care about these little clay things? Like, do you go back? It's like you forgot something in a hotel and you're already an hour away, you're driving, and then you think, oh, should I go back for my sunglasses that I forgot? Well, if it's an expensive pair of sunglasses, you might turn around and drive back the hour or something like that. We all have those stories. You forgot, I forgot that in the hotel. So Yaakov here had forgotten something, but in this case, he wouldn't, he couldn't get a chip the next day. It's gone. And what does he do? He chooses to go back for them. Now, by doing this, he risked his life. Because when he went back, we find that he's encountered by an angelic being in the form of a human. And this angel picks a fight with him. And the two of them begin to wrestle, and they wrestle all through the night. No other human being ever wrestled with an angel. Angels have, obviously, their strength is a divine strength. It's not a human strength. So for a human being to be able to wrestle with an angel means that the human being also has to have a divine strength, or else it's no match. And it seems like in this night, Yaakov unearths from within himself the most powerful energy that any human being has ever mustered up. Yaakov must tap his deepest reservoir of his deepest soul to be able to contend with the angel. And yet, even though Yaakov sustains a serious injury, he has a dislocated hip, he manages to keep up with the angel. Not only that, he gets the angel into a chokehold. By the time it gets to the morning, he's holding the angel, and the angel wants to go, and Yaakov has a grip on him, and he doesn't let him go. To the point that the angel has to get onto his knees to beg of Yaakov to let him out, and Yaakov allows him to leave on the condition that the angel first gives him a blessing, which really, as Rashi explains, means to admit that Yaakov rightfully took the blessings away from his brother Esau. This was the angel of Esau, as it says. And the angel had no choice, but if he wanted to go on his way, which he needed to, because he had whatever the sages say was his time to, be, he was supposed to be in roll call in heaven at a certain time, and if he wouldn't show up, he would get flogged. So the angel was at Yaakov's mercy, and he blesses Yaakov. So really the champion, even though Yaakov comes out with an injury, Yaakov clearly comes out the champ. Now, what I noticed this year is interesting. The Torah begins, this is one of the stories in the Torah where we have an explicit mention of angels. We do have it a few, but only when it comes to our forefathers do we have so much, not only, but when it comes to our patriarchs, we find an interaction with angels. We had a few weeks ago with the 3 angels coming to visit Abraham, but the Torah opens up with Yaakov sending angels to Esau. He sends his angels to go and see how his brother was doing, send messengers. And he didn't send human messengers, he sent angels. That was his thing. So he decides to confront his brother with angels. Now, what does his brother do? His brother, it's an eye for an eye. This is what I noticed this year. You're sending me angels, I'll send you an angel too. So Esau counters back with an angel. Now, the only difference is that the Esau's angel, it doesn't say anywhere, was sent by Esau. But the angel, maybe the angel of Esau, sees on his own, you're coming against me with angels. If you're using superhuman messengers, I'm going to fight you also with superhuman messengers. So the angel comes down to assist Esau. But the difference is that Yaakov's angels were not beaten by Esau. Quite on the contrary, it says that they beat up Esau pretty well. Esau's people were beaten. That's why Esau was softer. When the Torah says that Esau reconciled, the Midrash tells us that Esau and his men took a serious beating by the angels. So they were kind of softened until they met Yaakov. But Yaakov managed to overpower the angel. Fine. That's the story. A dramatic fight. And we know that this has incredible symbolic significance regarding the Jewish people and the struggle that we're going to have to endure during this long and treacherous exile until we're restored and come full circle back to the Holy Land and build our temple. The long night of exile involves not only combating physical forces of anti-Semitism and so on and so forth, but also powerful spiritual forces that are seeking to take the Jewish people down. And yet the Jewish people prevail and are triumphant over their enemy, all enemies. It's an incredible story. The verse that describes the vulnerability of Jacob, of Yaakov, before the whole fight with the angel begins, says as follows: Vayavaser Yaakov levado. The verse is in chapter 32 in Genesis, in Bereshis, verse 25. It says, Vayavaser Yaakov levado, that Yaakov remained alone. And it continues, Vayavek Ishmael, a man encounters him and wrestles with him. So the Midrash on that verse gives a very interesting insight. I told you already what the Talmud says and what Rashi says. The Talmud and Rashi say that Yaakov being alone, what made him be alone, was because of what seems to be something very minute, small, insignificant, and therefore by Yaakov putting himself into that place, it looks a little foolish. As we said earlier, Yaakov goes back for these little small clay vessels. It's not a big thing. It's the him being alone might not be so complimentary to him, because he went back and risked his well-being by being in a dark night alone without any. And he knows he's surrounded by enemies because he sees his brother is coming. Who knows? His brother might send agents to attack him a little early, a surprise attack. Maybe he's laying an ambush. Yaakov should not have been alone, but he was alone. And what did he go for? He didn't forget his laptop. What did he forget? A few silly jugs. The sages, but it's not silly, because the sages say that for a tzaddik and for a great man, his possessions, each of them have all of his material possessions contain they're here to serve the divine, and therefore everything has purpose and meaning. And if its purpose and its meaning is the service of God, then it gets godly significance. So there's no such a thing as something that's worthless or meaningless. Everything needs to be treated with respect. If God gave me this possession, it might be something that I can buy in the 99-cent store, but the fact that God gave me this possession, it has significance, and it's not something to be dismissed just because I'm lazy to go back. Okay. But that's what Midrash and I'm sorry, that's what the Talmud says in Masechtas Chulin, and Rashi says that as well, that he went back for Pachim Ketanim. Actually, they even play it on the words. It says, Vayavaser Yaakov levado, Yaakov remained alone. The Medrash, the Talmud plays with the word, not the Talmud, it's the Balei HaTosos, the commentary of the Tosfos scholars, they say that that Yaakov remained for small vessels, Pachim Ketanim, is actually hinted in the word levado. We have to make a slight amendment in the verse, in the word. The word levado means alone, but if you take the bays and you alter the bays very lightly, the letter vays can become a chaf, because the bays and a chaf are very similar. Only difference is that the bottom of the bays is like flat, and it goes, but in a chaf it's rounded. It's like the top and the back. The top and the bottom of the chaf are rounded, and by a bays they're more. There's a corner there. There's a straight. The two lines are straight as opposed to rounded at the edges. So you take the word levado and you turn it into a chaf, you get the word lekado. Kado means a kad, in Hebrew means a jug. So it's as if the verse would say it explicitly by saying levado. Why is he alone? Because he went back to get kado, his jug. The Midrash, however, takes the word levado and gives us a complete other interpretation. Not only another interpretation, but one that is completely opposite from this interpretation that we said that it means for small little jugs. According to the Midrash, Yaakov being alone is the highest compliment, and it's the highest possible state of being. The Midrash says that Yaakov is compared to God. Just like God is levado, he is alone. No one is with him. He is exclusive, him and no one other than him. In the same level, Yaakov stood levado. He stood in that level of exclusivity, which means no one can enter into his space. He is alone. He's the one and only. In a sense, we're doing a comparison over here between Yaakov, and God Almighty. There is a kind of like the two of them stand alone. The Midrash says on these words that the word Vayivasa Yaakov Levado, we look in scripture, we find who else does it say by him that he is Levado? There is a verse speaking about God in the future in Isaiah. It says, V'niskav Hashem Levado. God is going to be exalted. I think that's what V'nizgav means. It means God is going to be exalted, Levado alone, Bayomahu on that day. So not only are we talking about God's exclusivity, but we're talking about the revelation of God's exclusivity, of him being alone and not and uncomparable. No one can compare or compete with God. And God stands as the supreme power and one that is rules over everybody and everything, dominant over everybody and everything, and in truth is everybody and everything, and yet remains alone. So the oneness of God, but the oneness of God as it is revealed in the future, in the days of Mashiach. Because we know that God is one now as well, but now we don't see it. Now we see a pluralistic world. We see things that can kind of challenge God's unity, or at least appears to be challenging God's unity. But in the time of Mashiach, it's going to be revealed in the most potent, powerful way that God is alone. So we might say God in his highest performance. And who matches God in his highest performance? Who do we put on the same pedestal as God in his highest moment? In his highest revelation? Vayavasar Yaakov Levado. Yaakov remains alone. It's interesting, if you read the Midrash before that, the Midrash actually says that there is a verse that says, Rab Brachia says in the name of Rabbi Simon, who makes the comment like this on a verse that says in Deuteronomy, it says, Ein Ka'el Yeshurin. Moses says to the Jewish people when he's completing his blessings, simply he's talking to the Jewish people and he calls them by a very unique name, Yeshurin. Yeshurin is one of our names. The Jewish people are called Jacob. Jewish people are called Israel. The Jewish people are also called Yeshurin. Like it says, Vayehi bi Yeshurin Melech, that God is amongst Yeshurin, amongst the Jewish people, a king. So Yeshurin is one of the names of the Jewish people because Yeshurin is one of the names of Jacob. We are the same names as Yaakov. The collective Jewish people are named in the name of our father Jacob. Like we find a lot of times, the Jewish people are referred to as Yaakov. The Jewish people are referred to as Israel, which is Yaakov's private name, yet it becomes the name of the collective identity of all of his children. We're called Israel, the nation of Israel. We're also called Jacob, and we're also called Yeshurin. So Moshe says about the Jewish people, Ein, or says to the Jewish people, Ein Ka'el. There's no one like God. Who is he talking to? Yeshurin, to the Jewish people. Moshe is speaking to Israel, and he says, no one like God. The Midrash, however, gives a midrashic twist on that verse. It's a little bit difficult. Why do you have to say Yeshurin? Just say Ein Ka'el. There's no one like God. What do you have to emphasize? Israel, you should know, Ein Ka'el. There's no one like God. Just make a statement. Ein Ka'el. Ein Ka'el. There's no one like God. Why do you have to emphasize Yeshurin? So the Midrash reads like this. Stunning. Ein Kael. There's no one like God. However, yeah, there is. Yeshurun. Anybody besides Yeshurun is not like God, but Yeshurun is like God. That means that Jacob is like Hashem. No one can compare to God besides Israel. Powerful Midrash. And the Midrash goes on to say, everything that God will do in the future, meaning all the phenomenal revelations of the divine and the super powerful actions or deeds or performances that God will perform and reveal in the world when the time comes for godly revelation to happen, all those super achievements or super powerful things, God does them already now in the world, but he does them through the tzaddikim. And the Midrash goes on to say, God resurrects the dead. Elijah the prophet resurrected the dead. Elisha the prophet resurrected the dead. God does so and so. God stops the rain, as it says, holds back. Elijah's called Eliyahu Hanavi, said the rain should stop. Hashem takes something that's little and makes a lot out of it. Eliyahu Hanavi and Elisha made a little bit of oil, and they made it into a lot of a massive amount. And also, all the tricks that God does, the tzaddikim also do. And then the Midrash concludes, just like God is alone, so too Jacob is alone. Yaakov is alone. Tells us a lot about the deeper understanding of what Israel is, the Jewish people are, and particularly what the tzaddikim, the righteous of Israel are, what is revealed through them. Okay. Now, what we see over here is something interesting, that the word levado contains within itself two interpretations. And when you analyze them, you feel that it seems like the message, the meaning of this word has two interpretations, but which couldn't have been further one from the other. According to one interpretation, the levado is referring to Yaakov went back for a few clay jugs. That means in the word levado itself, as we said earlier, levado means lekado, for a small little jug. And then comes the Midrash, and the Midrash says, levado. Who else is levado? God Almighty himself. God Almighty, where God stands alone. That means that there's nothing else other than the simple truth of God's absolute existence. Levado. God, as he is revealing himself in his truth, as he is, and there's no one but him, as he is beyond all definitions, beyond all characterizations, just the simple essence of God, levado alone. And Yaakov is somehow as well connected to that levado, to that one. Hold it, a moment ago you told me levado means small little clay jugs. How can the same word mean the silliest of things? Old bottles of, I don't know, some Coca-Cola bottles, that he's going back to get them because, he used them. And levado means the exclusivity of God himself. It's both in the same word. So we might say, okay, yeah, Torah is very, very variable. The Torah has so many levels. And the Torah could be interpreted like this and could be interpreted like this. So the Midrash is running with the word in one direction, and Rashi is running with the word in a different direction. That's the coolness of the Torah, that it is so broad. It has so many layers and so many different ways of seeing it. As long as it's all Torah, it's all correct and it's all true. That would be okay to say that. However, we do know that as different that the pshatim in Torah are, that the interpretations of Torah are, as 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 far as they might seem one from each other, if they are an a explanation or an interpretation of the same word or the same phrase, there needs to be, and if it's a true pirush, if it's not just a someone making up a pirush that has no real basis, if it's true Torah, then all of the Torah is connected one to each other. So when you'll find two interpretations on one verse or on one pasuk, they must be a connection between one and the other. And in this case, it seems like there cannot be any connection at all. You're talking about the silliest existence, the most meaningless thing, versus the most meaningful being, which is the levado of God himself. Which one is Yaakov going back to? A small little can, empty can? Or is he going back to be in the exclusiveness of the absolute oneness of God himself? What are you supposed to feel when you say the word levado? Are you supposed to feel lekado, or you're supposed to feel ein od milvado? Vayanizgav Hashem levado. What's the message here? And the answer is both. And both are the same. And both are one. The lekado of a small little jug, and the ein od milvado, and the v'nizgav Hashem levado, God will be exalted alone, come together. Why? Because Jacob is involved. And Yaakov reveals something so deep where the two are not a contradiction. Not only they're not a contradiction, it's only in the tiny, small little cans and small little jugs that Yaakov is going back for, the small little moments of life, the tiny little insignificant encounters that we have, is where we're tapping V'nizgav Hashem levado. God is alone. The two of them are fused, the two of them are one. Let's explore that. Let's see what that means to us. So we know Parshas Vayishlach is usually the Torah portion that either is the week of the great holiday of the 19th of Kislev, or it is the Shabbos that welcomes the great holiday of the 19th of Kislev. This year, the 19th of Kislev is going to fall out next week, Parshas Vayishlach, and Parshas Vayeshev, which is next week's Torah portion. But this Shabbos is going to give the oomph. This Shabbos is going to give the empowerment for the holiday. What's the 19th of Kislev? 19th of Kislev is the day of the great Hasidic holiday in which the teachings of Hasidism were given the green light to flow and be revealed to the world. The more external story, I shouldn't say it's not necessarily external, but the more immediate, tangible story was that the Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad Hasidism, was arrested by the Russian Tsarist government, accused for crimes on the level of treason, based on false accusations by people that were envious of him and people that were opposed to the new fledgling Hasidic movement, and tried to destroy it with whatever possible means possible, even God forbid, to put even at the cost of having this great saintly rabbi be put to death, because had the Russian government decided that it was treason or based on false witnesses and testimony, then the Alter Rebbe could have been put to death. But the ends justified the means. The ends, according to these people that were extremely misguided, religious Jews, but they were completely misguided. Their understanding was that the Hasidic movement was a variation or a deviation away from Judaism, and it was some kind of a new type of a cult that was going to interfere with traditional Judaism, and it has to be snuffed out no matter what. And if they didn't have the authority to shoot the leaders, so to speak, they did whatever was in their power, was to bring the Russian government in in order to take down the Alter Rebbe. After 53 days of imprisonment, where the Alter Rebbe had to prove his innocence in front of the czarist judges and officers and high court, he proved the innocence of Hasidism, of himself, and the virtue of the Hasidic teachings. And part of the accusation was it's a new religion, it's a way, it's not Judaism, and so on and so forth. And he needed to take some very, very, very powerful, deep spiritual and abstract ideas and be able to explain it to non-Jews, which was an incredible, unbelievable feat that he was able to do that, until they were the ones that themselves were able to see that he is righteous, saintly, and that his path is a correct and justified path in Judaism. And as a result of that, they gave him the permit, they let him out of prison, and they gave him full permission to be able to teach his teachings. That's the external, and the day that he was liberated was the 19th of Kislev. The deeper inner story, as we are told, as the Alter Rebbe revealed, that which I just related was the external element of it. But what's happening on a deeper level is that there were very great heavenly accusations against Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi and Hasidism because the Hasidic mentors and teachers, primarily the Alter Rebbe, was revealing godliness in the world, the deepest, highest, most intense, and richest secrets of the Torah that the world was not privy until that time, revealing godliness in this world, exposing the truths of God that until the Alter Rebbe was not meant and was not information that people were meant to hear. And they felt that, and in heaven there was an accusation that, God created the world for the world to be a place of concealment, a place where God is hidden. And here he's coming and revealing way too much. And he's blowing the cover of the world, concealing God. He's spilling the truth. And it's not yet Mashiach's days. It's not yet the time of the redemption. And that's going to be in the future. But until we reach that point, you can't give it away. So you can't expose the truth. So they were an accusation against him. And in the end, it cleared up in heaven. I guess there was a back and forth in heaven. When it was proven in heaven, or when it was argued in heaven above, in the spiritual realms above, that Judaism needs this extra infusion of light for Judaism to be sustained, for Judaism to make it to the time of the redemption, for us to be able to make it through the last darkest moments, the last 200 years of exile, intact. And not only that, for us to be able to finish the job that we need to do during the time of the exile, these teachings become absolutely vital and a lifesaver. When in heaven they decided that that's the case, and they gave the Alter Rebbe a thumbs up, it was exactly at that time that down here, the Russian government also saw the righteousness of the Alter Rebbe, and they released him, and he was able to continue his teaching. So therefore, we might say that the holiday of the 19th of Kislev is actually what saved Judaism. And if one made these arguments years ago, you can maybe question yes or no, what, where, and when, but today's days we see that it's precisely the teachings of Hasidism that have permeated. First of all, it's what is the only thing that has kind of reached the entire Jewish, that speaks to the Jewish people that are unaffiliated, that are far, that are removed from Yiddishkeit, the most powerful operations that rekindles their souls and get them back, like we see the millions of hundreds of thousands of Jews who once saw themselves as secular return to the way of Torah, and it's because it's presented to them through the lens of Hasidism that makes Judaism attractive and becomes something that they can tune into. That's number one. In addition to that, the people that are inspired by Hasidism have the strength, the ability, the devotion, and dedication to spread Judaism and to bring the teachings of Torah to the far-flung corners of the world, and thereby engaging the Jewish people, the millions and millions of Jews who have kind of been victims of this super long exile. So in that sense, for sure, Hasidism saved the day. But in a sense, we can even say that even those who don't subscribe in an official way to the Hasidic way of it, and there are many Torah observant Jews who don't see themselves as Hasidic, but whoever reads between the lines in all that the rabbis teach across the entire spectrum of Torah Judaism will see how much Hasidic thought and the original ideas of Tanya and the Alter Rebbe has actually filtered its way into the thinking process of Jews across the world. Some people know it, and some people aren't aware that these are Hasidic ideas. But Hasidism has literally permeated the entire consciousness of the Jewish people. And it's very, very, and I am very comfortable saying, I'm not just saying it as myself, but is that without Yutes Kislev and without the Alter Rebbe's liberation and the Tanya coming to the world and its effects and its effects of its effects, there would not be let's put it this way, it's very questionable of what would remain of authentic Judaism in the world. It's very questionable, if anything would be here. So the 19th of Kislev is a super yontiv, it's a super holidays. And in years the past, it was celebrated to a degree by all Hasidic circles because it's also the yard site, the day of the passing of the Maggid of Mizrich, the great saintly Rebbe of the Alter Rebbe, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. It's a day of his passing. So therefore it's considered a holy day in the Hasidic world in general, not only in the Chabad world, but primarily the day was very much celebrated primarily in Chabad circles because it also carried with it the significance of the Alter Rebbe's redemption. However, you're watching in the last 15, 20, 30, 40, about, I would say the last 20 years, but especially the last 10 years, is that it's becoming a holiday that is beginning to seep in to circles all across. You see it in Israel, all over the place. People are beginning to recognize the significance of the day. In any case, that's the Yontif. Since this Yontif falls out always in the week of Parshas Vayishlach, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, says there is a connection between the two. Because based on what it says in Shalah, which is one of the great books in Jewish mysticism, the Shalah says that every parsha of the Torah contains within it the secrets relating to the holidays that occur, even those holidays in which we're commemorating something that happened many years after the Torah was given. Because the Torah is divine, and therefore in the Torah is encoded all the energies and all the lights and all the miracles and all the revelations that are going to happen in the future. So it's never coincidence that this holiday falls out when we're reading this portion. It's because the Torah of this portion is the nucleus and is the soul of the holiday. So what is the one of the primary messages of the 19th of Kislev? What's its drive? What's its power? As we discussed earlier, the power of Yutes Kislev is that the secrets of Torah, which are the secret of God's existence, the deeper truths of the divine, should be shared with the masses. That's in a nutshell. The Alter Rebbe went against everything that was going on before him. There was always a study amongst the great Jewish scholars and sages. There was always a tradition of hidden Torah, of secrets. But it's exactly that. It was secrets. And you had to really prove your credentials to be allowed into those very, very tight clubs in which they would sheer, first of all, you had to be a scholar and know the entire exoteric element of Torah. You had to really be a scholar, know all of halacha and all of Talmud and so on and so forth. In addition to that, you had to be a very, very elevated, refined human being, impeccable in your yirat shamayim, in your fear of God, and in your service of Hashem. Only then, when you were a tzaddik, a saintly person, and a Talmud Chacham, and a great scholar, then maybe whoever was what we might say the bearers, those who the watchmen, the guardians of this knowledge, they would share it with you. Sometimes these teachings were shared by angelic beings, like Elijah the prophet would come and teach you the secrets of the Torah. Or sometimes you found a very special Rebbe who in secret would teach it to you after midnight when no one was around in a locked room. That's the way these secrets were shared. The Alter Rebbe went and started flooding the world with the teachings. And who were the listeners of the Alter Rebbe? The masses. Everybody can come in here. Scholar and non-scholar. Regular people, businessmen, laymen, and ordinary folks. People that were pretty average in their Torah knowledge, maybe even poor in their Torah knowledge, average in their observance, not necessarily great tzaddikim. Yes, it was always hoped that the people are people who care about mitzvot and so on and so forth. And that's who the Alter Rebbe taught to. And what did he give them? He poured knowledge of God. If you ever tune into our classes that we learn Thursday nights, for instance, it's pouring secrets of secrets like that. And this was the way the Alter Rebbe, set it up, and this became the trademark of Chabad Hasidism. But what was it based on? It was a fulfillment of something that happened already earlier. The Alter Rebbe's mentor's mentor, the founder of the Hasidic movement, the holy Baal Shem Tov, writes in a letter of an encounter that he himself had in the heavenly spheres above. How he once traveled into the heavens above. He made what's called Aliyat Neshama. He was able to elevate his spirit to the higher realms. And he traveled and he roamed through the heavenly chambers, worlds of light, chambers of incredible God divine revelation, where tzaddikim sit, those who passed away already, souls of the tzaddikim sit and study and learn and revel in God's light. The Baal Shem Tov was traveling through the various different worlds. And then he enters into a special chamber called the chamber of Mashiach. Imagine going into the chamber where the soul of Mashiach is, radiating from one end of the world to the other end of the world. And the Baal Shem Tov says to Mashiach, when is the master coming? When are you going to arrive? We're waiting and waiting. And Mashiach says to the Baal Shem Tov, when your well springs, when your mayonos, when your springs are going to reach chutza, outside. It actually says that when the Baal Shem Tov heard that, the Baal Shem Tov started weeping. Tears were flowing down his. He says it in the letter that he was crying. I think he says it in the letter. I have to check it out, the letter again, but I think he was crying. Simple reason he was crying was he felt that would take very, very long. And he was hoping that Mashiach would say to him, I'm coming today. I'm coming tomorrow. But that his springs, his teachings, the core principles of Hasidism, which is the deepest Torah and the deepest truths of God, would be revealed outside. It'll take a long time. But there is a deeper reason why he was crying. Because the Baal Shem Tov got frightened and terrified of the idea that such sacred knowledge is going to have to be taken onto the street, is going to have to be brought to unworthy places. How do you take something so sacred, something so holy, something so special, something so brilliant and precious, and put it out onto the street, you are literally cheapening it. And it hurt the Baal Shem Tov. And yet he was told, well, that's a prerequisite for the coming of Mashiach. It has to happen. Okay, so that was like the mission. It was told to the Baal Shem Tov, but which one of the Baal Shem Tov students actually took that mission and made it his? That was the Chabad branch of Hasidism. Because the great students of the Baal Shem Tov and all the Hasidic rabbis traveled out across Eastern Europe and set up shop and attracted many people. And they inspired them in the way of the Baal Shem Tov and fired them up and taught them how to love God and brought joy into the service of Hashem and made them have extra dose of Avas Yisrael, of love, and taught them how to serve God even while they're engaged in material things and so on and so forth. The very principles of Hasidism spread across literally took Europe by storm. It was amazing how quickly there was a renaissance and a complete transformation of European Jewry, and then moved out of European Jewry even farther. However, they did not share the essential, deepest secrets of the Torah. They inspired with the consequential attitudes that come from these secrets. Who had the secrets? Who understood these deep Kabbalistic or inner lights that the Baal Shem Tov revealed, which is really higher than Kabbalah? Who had this? There were the guardians of those knowledge. These were the super souls, the great tzaddikim. They were worthy of it. They were truly worthy of such diamonds. They held it. And from their aura and from their light and from the sparks from the radiance that came from their holy face, from the love of God that they exuded, and the love that they had to people, and their love of Hashem that they projected, it was irresistible, and it inspired people. But they didn't give them the teaching itself. They gave them little nuggets. They did teach, but nuggets. The Alter Rebbe listened to what Mashiach said to the Baal Shem Tov. Likesheyafutzu mainoisecha. Mainoisecha means Mainoisecha means your wellspring. Now let's hear that very deeply. Your wellspring has to go outside. Perhaps we could have said it a little differently. You will draw water from your wellspring and you will water people. You will connect a hose to your spring and maybe fill those that are thirsting, give them some inspiration. Give them a little bit of your water. Like Eliezer says to Rivka, what is the word over there? Hashke'eni ma'at mayim. Give me a little bit of water, mekadech, from your jug. A little water, and I'll drink. Maybe a little water. But that's not what Mashiach said to the Baal Shem Tov. Mashiach says you will take the spring itself and bring the spring outdoors. What does that mean? There is a spring. From the spring is embedded deep inside the ground. It's hidden. No one can see where the spring is coming from. The spring is coming from a very deep, hidden, subterranean waters, deep under the ground, deep, hidden amongst big rocks or boulders, and deep under the earth there's this water source that's coming out. You can see waters trickling out, but there's a spring deep inside. It's one thing to get a little cup, fill your water bottle, get a little Fiji water, and from there and go take it. As they say, it's coming from the source. Bottled water from the source. Other Rebbes, and I'm going to say other great tzaddikim, they had a water bottling company. They took water and they threw people bottles of water from the same spring of the Holy Baal Shem Tov, but it was giving them in a limited fashion. The Alter Rebbe moved the boulders away and exposed the entire spring. More than that, he said, I'm going to take the spring itself and go from town to town and bring the spring from where all the godliness that was shining, that the Baal Shem Tov discovered, the deep knowledge of the infinite, of the Ein Sof, of God's absolute truth. I'm going to take these truths and I'm going to bring this outside to the masses. And that's what he did, Shabbos after Shabbos, week after week, when he would pour an abundance of light. Now, the Alter Rebbe reached Jews who were keeping mitzvot, because in those days, most of the Jews were religious, they were observant. But as Hasidism progressed, and we come to our generation, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, it's not enough, not enough. Chutza means outside. Outside means to everybody. Everybody should have access to the spring. Even those that you might see are so unworthy because they're actually sinning. They do not eat kosher. They do not keep Shabbos. They do not have a mezuzah on their door. They didn't put on tefillin today. They didn't say the Shema. They're intermarried, and a Jew is living with a non-Jewish woman, or a Jewish woman living with a non-Jewish man. So on every level of existence, they're very, 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 very poorly connected to God. They're really, really living outside of Judaism and of holiness. And in many ways, a lot of impurity may be going on in their life. And you would say the last place you're going to put the highest secrets of Torah into their hands, that is horrible. And yet the Rebbe says, no, Mashiach has to come. The spring has to get into a place, chutzah, to a place that is not a setting for it, a place that's not worthy for it, to people that are not in an elevated state of consciousness for them to be worthy for it. Everyone needs to have access to those teachings. I have absolutely zero control of who's watching my YouTube and our classes that we give over here. And I invite every single person on the planet to listen. Chutzah, outside. Everyone. Obviously, the intended audience are Jews, but in many ways, certain elements of it are definitely appropriate even for non-Jews to study. Chutzah, outside, to everybody. Flood the world. That's the Yom Tov of Yutas Kislev. The question over here is, why? What's the reason for the flooding of knowledge, of such deeper knowledge? In other words, we're all admitting that once upon a time it was inappropriate. If someone tried to do this 500 years ago, it would have been condemned and it would have been considered a sin. And it's in our generations that we say, this is the calling of the hour. Spread the light. Share these classes that I give. It's not just me. I'm just sharing from the spring. And what do I mean from the spring? The holy books that I'm teaching from, that's the spring. That's the deep teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Bring this knowledge everywhere. Why now? What happened now? So here's really, really astonishing. There are two reasons why now, why this is the time to do so. And the two reasons are opposite reasons. And here is where we will see the connection to what we had discussed earlier about Yaakov. Same idea, opposite reasons. One is because we have no choice. The world has gotten so dark. It has become so difficult for Jewish men and women to remain connected. The exile has overstayed its welcome. It's hung around here way too long. And it's created such distance between the Jewish soul and God. It created so many blockages. It created such darkness. And as you can literally see, the Jewish people remained observant, connected to God for about 1700 years. It's only in the last 200 years of exile that so many Jewish men, brothers and sisters, became alienated from Judaism. How did they become alienated? How did they? It's because it's been so long since we've seen God. It's been so long since we felt the radiance of God in the Holy Temple. It's been so. And you start, and the exile and the secular world, especially once the world started becoming more seductive, the world is opened up for the Jewish people to draw it into the materialistic world, a world that is lacking in awareness of God, and a world that is obsessed with wealth, with money making, with power, with whatever it is, and the Jew is not locked up in a ghetto anymore, and he's kind of invited to participate in the greater world. This became too tempting for millions of Jews, and slowly but surely, more and more and more got sucked up in the externality of life, and forgot that they are part of the chosen nation, people that are here and to live and to bring the divine teachings and the divine consciousness to the world. Jews forgot. The exile is way too dark and way too long. So when God saw that that's the situation, and obviously there's reasons why the exile needed to be so long, the job needed to be finished, the Jews needed to conduct, to learn, to be amongst the nations for this duration of time in order for whatever divine tikkun needs to happen to the world, godly intention needs to happen. But when God saw that he's running the risk of losing the Jewish people completely, then as we said earlier, God had no choice but to increase the revelation, to increase the Torah, the deeper lights of Torah into the world, so that will counter the darkness. So God sent the Baal Shem Tov into the world. Then he sent, together with all of these super souls, of these great holy tzaddikim, which was like a batch of souls that has been released in the world, souls that were equal in greatness to the prophets, to the Tanoim and the Amoraim. That's the truth. The souls of the great Hasidic masters that were released in the world back at the beginning, especially of the Hasidic movement, were souls of the quality of souls that were here for thousands of years earlier, with that kind of spiritual capacity. And they came and infused Judaism with a whole new energy, and therefore, as we said earlier, saved the people from falling. But in addition to them, God sent a new soul, who was the Alter Rebbe, who's like from amongst the Hasidic masters, a super soul, to actually open up the flow of Torah to the world in the likes that we've never seen. Hidden Torah, to teach In other words, to be the trailblazer in Yafutsu Mainoisecha Chutza, to bring the spring itself outside. Said everybody has that. We cannot be picky anymore because this is a lifesaver. People need this to breathe. This is their oxygen for their soul. And that's one explanation. And then there is another explanation. It's because Mashiach is about to come. And the time of Mashiach is a time when God will be completely revealed in this world. And one of the most important and greatest contributions to the world that is going to happen in the days of Mashiach is that we are going to experience an expansion of Torah. We're going to experience a download and a continuous download of Torah, the likes that will make the Torah that we've studied until now look like peanuts, look like child's play, look like silliness in compared to the massive download of divine wisdom that's going to be poured to the world. As the verse says, Ki Torah chadasha me'iti teitze, new Torah is going to issue forth from God. And it's going to be revealed through Mashiach. And all the sages that lived in all the generations, and all the scholars, and all the prophets, at the time of the resurrection are going to come back to life, and they're going to sit by the feet of Mashiach to hear pearls of wisdom and insight that the world has never heard. That is mind-blowing, deeper and deeper and deeper. That's the future world of Mashiach. Umola aretz deas Hashem, the world will become filled with knowledge of God. So we need to acclimate. We need to get ready for that. So we start right before the time of Mashiach. We start getting an increase of Torah. When we say an increase, we don't only mean more Torah quantity. We mean basically qualitatively. Deeper Torah starts pouring into the world, that which has not been here, and it's given to everybody because everybody needs to expand their minds and get ready for the revelation of Mashiach. And it's, as the Rebbe says, it's actually a Torah law. Shabbos, every week when Shabbos comes, we know that Shabbos, we have to increase our enjoyment of life. Shabbos is a day of pleasure, not just spiritual pleasure, physical pleasure. That's why every Jewish home has more than a Thanksgiving dinner every Shabbos. Because Shabbos, we honor it. And there's all kinds of dishes and food, and it's something that we honor the Shabbos. And we're supposed to take pleasure on Shabbos. Yet we know that the pleasure and the experience of the delicious foods of Shabbos, we begin gnashing on them before Shabbos. And that's not because it's in the kitchen and it smells good, so we raid the kitchen before it's time. That's not the reason. It's because we are told we are supposed to do so. It's a mitzvah. That's one of my favorite mitzvahs. Anybody in the audience like this mitzvah? I like this mitzvah. This mitzvah, it's a mitzvah to taste from every Shabbos dish. It says not even you should taste from Shabbos food. You should go to every single dish and taste it before Shabbos. I guess maybe so that we whet our appetite and we're excited for Shabbos. But a little taste of every dish. So just like it is with the physical Shabbos, so too is the great, grand, cosmic Shabbos. The great Shabbos is coming to the world. The Shabbos of Mashiach. The Shabbos of divine revelation. The Shabbos of an explosion of godly revelation and Torah knowledge. So on Friday, which now is the Friday of time, we are told, get a taste. And that's the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and those who really the master chefs and cooks, top chef, Like they have the show Top Chef, right? And it's not my show, but my wife likes Top Chef. We go on Top Chef or whatever things. The top chefs were the Chabad rabbis. They knew how to prepare dishes of futuristic Torah like no one else. Topping off with the Rebbe like we're learning right now. Like mind-blowing teachings and insight. And you know what it is? These are all little nuggets. These are little foretaste of what is to come. These are Mashiach. So now we have to turn around and ask ourselves the question, hold it. So what's motivating all this increased light, all this Hasidic Torah, all this spread of Mayonis, the springs have to come chutza outside? Is it because we're living in the lowest of all times, in a time of such a darkness, where there's so little in the world, or is it because it's such an elevated time, it's right before Shabbos? Which one is it? Going back, is Yaakov alone? Is Yaakov alone? Is Yaakov alone because he's going back for small little soda cans? Or is Yaakov alone because he's entering into the consciousness and he's being elevated into the state where his being is reflecting God's exclusivity? Is it the highest moment of Levado alone? Is it Levado alone, or is it Lekado for a little jug? Same paradox. So the Rebbe says, this is the secret. This is the secret. The secret is the whole purpose of existence is to fuse big and small. The whole purpose of God creating the world is to bring about a unification of transcendence, of infinity with the finite, to merge opposites. And the merging of opposites happen on all aspects, in all realms. Let's begin with Torah. We spoke earlier about the call of the hour, the most important a project in all of history, which was given for our generation, is to bring deeper Torah to the outside, as we said earlier. The Rebbe says this starts in Torah itself. In Torah itself, there is the inside of Torah and the outside of Torah. For instance, from when God gave the Torah at Sinai, there was always two tracks in Torah. There was the law, the exoteric part of the Torah, as we call it, Nigla, which is something that was available for the masses to study. Everybody studied it. Everybody learned it. That included whether it's, once it evolved into Mishnah, into Talmud, law, basically, learning the Torah law, learning the Torah logic of reasoning, and all this Talmudic study, everything that's studied in the yeshivot, and so on and so forth. That's one element of Torah. We might frame it as the Torah becomes worldly. What do I mean worldly? It deals with worldly phenomena. It deals with God's rules, but God's rules applying to the world, to physical life, physical existence, kosher, non-kosher, innocent, guilty, pure, impure, and so on and so forth. And that's called external, because it's dealing with the external visible reality. Very finite, defined reality. And then there is the hidden Torah. The hidden Torah is the Torah that talks about God, talks about divine attributes, spiritual worlds, angels, higher than angels, celestial beings, the integration of Sefirot above, How the infinite light, how first is just the infinite light, and then the tzimtzum, the contraction, and it deals with the most loftiest, immense, abstract ideas, analyzing analyzing the divine. That's the internal element of Torah. And as mentioned earlier, there has always been a study of both. But the two of them were separate. They were like two complete separate tracks. The track of the revealed and the track. And there were scholars, it's a very interesting thing to note. There were scholars, there were experts in one and not in the other. There were many Torah giants who were huge in the law, the Talmud, but not that knowledgeable and esoteric. And there were those who were, again, in order to be allowed to study the deeper secrets of Torah, you had to be a Torah scholar. But their main greatness was not their power of the revealed Torah. They weren't halachic codifiers or things like that. They weren't necessarily rabbanim upaskin chilas, as we call it, who issued Torah verdicts. They were mainly Kabbalists and what do they call them? Aesthetics? No, what do they? Not aesthetics. What's the word? Mystics. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. They were mystics. Two different worlds. The concept and the reason why these two remain distinct is because one is the small Torah and one is the big Torah. The small Torah is Torah applied to a finite existence, to a small world. The big Torah is the Torah that talks about the big ideas. The big ideas of the divine is God. The Talmud actually calls it. Talmud says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai he knew everything in Torah, and he did not leave anything untouched in Torah, not a davar katon v'davar gadol, not a small thing or a big thing. He didn't miss anything. The sages say, what's a small thing? The discussions of Abaya and Rava. That's called the small things. What's Abaya and Rava? Abaya and Rava are one of the two most prominent sages of Talmudic discussion. What is called big things? Maaseh Merkava, the study of the divine chariot. That's what the Talmud calls the big ideas. There is the big ideas and there's the small ideas. And there's a great barrier between them. You can't mix the two because this is big and this is small. Big and small don't go together. So you study them separately. I want to know how to live my life in a physical world and according to God's will. I study the practical Torah. And then there is a non-practical Torah. There is a higher, more spiritual Torah meant for deep meditation and deep communion with God. Two separate Torahs. In order, however, what an amazing idea. In order for the well springs of Hasidus to reach the street, first we need to bridge the two Torahs. The inside of the Torah and the outside of the Torah need to converge. The big Torah and the small Torah need to fuse. Now we know that the Alter Rebbe, the author of the we spoke about him earlier, the first Chabad Rebbe, his Hebrew name was Shneor. Shneor Zalman. Now Shneor is a name, but the real name Shneor comes from, you break the word down, Shneor, two lights. And that's because the Alter Rebbe was a genius in both. Now there were scholars before the Alter Rebbe that were geniuses in both. Knew both Torahs. The Rebbe, however, argues, again, and he doesn't really give much, in this particular talk, he doesn't give much explanation to this idea, and I'm not going to get carried away with it because we have a lot to talk about still, and we want to complete this, that the class should not be a 4-hour class. So I'm trying to keep it concise. But the Rebbe says the Alter Rebbe was a revolutionary in that he braided both parts of the Torah together. In the revealed part of the Torah, he was able to reveal the mysticism, and in the mysticism, he would immediately be able to bring it right down into practical observance. There was an incredible convergence of the practical and the esoteric and the abstract, and the two of them fusing in one magnificent, beautiful mosaic of the inner Torah and the outer Torah. And it's precisely this shidduch, this braiding together, or this fusion of the inside of Torah with the outside of Torah, which enables the general idea of taking the inner godly ideas and bringing it out into the world in general. You first have to do it in the Torah, which the Torah is the blueprint of the world, and then you can actually do it on the street. You first have to connect the higher Torah to the lower Torah, which the lower Torah is the blueprint for creation. And once you can infuse the divine map with the world map in Torah, then you can actually bring divine into the world itself. So the Alter Rebbe's work began in Torah before it happened in the world. Now, just like there is the big Torah and the small Torah, so to speak, in Torah, there is also in our divine, in our souls, in each and every one of us, there is the big us and the small us. Now, let me explain that for a moment. One of the teachings of Hasidism that we always learn is that we are, as Jews in this world, we are divine human hybrid. Let me repeat that again. As Jews in this world, we are a divine human hybrid. Our humanity is our humanity because a Jewish man or woman is human like a human being with all the human, very much part of the human condition, with all the human restrictions and limitations and boundaries and hang-ups and frailties, but also all what makes humans special and good and wonderful. But it's still human. But we do know that inside of us resides a piece of God from above, which is our soul. Now, that soul has a lower side of the soul in which it vests itself into our human condition and becomes very much part of our humanity. And that's our soul's divine human powers. When I'm saying divine human is because it inserts itself into our human faculties of intelligence and emotions. But it's infused with a divine intelligence and with the divine emotions. But it's all part of a definable, limited experience. And then we know that we have the more transcendental dimension of our soul, which is not residing on earth, which remains in heaven. What I mean when I say it's remains in heaven is that it doesn't diminish itself to the earthy consciousness. It remains purely in its heavenly sphere. How does it express itself? What does that mean? We have powerful faith. And our faith isn't necessarily subject to the limitations of logic. With our faith, we can be certain and convinced and be attached to certain truths that we can never explain why. Which means our human selves cannot accommodate it, cannot rationalize it, or cannot grasp it's this truth. It's just, we just know it in our deeper self. What is that? It's exactly like the Torah. Let's go back to the Torah. What did we say before? There is a element of the Torah, the lower, so to speak, the tail end of the Torah, that vests itself into the material, into the creation element. And then there's the higher side of Torah that is just attached to the infinity of God. Just like it is within the Torah, so is within our souls. The lower tail end of the soul becomes and is very much the internal energies of our human experience, but it's part of our human experience, intellect, emotions, and so on and so forth. It's finite. Our upper part of our soul is expansive, knows the infinite, is one with the infinite, revels in God. Obviously, it's our superconscious. It's a big higher than our mind. And these are two dimensions of existence that have always been part of our soul's makeup. That's how a soul has been since God began delivering souls into bodies. It's always been. But there was always a kind of barrier between the two. It was like there's a certain limit to your mind, and there are certain areas where you throw your mind up and say, I can't operate based on logic and reason. My mind can never understand this. I'm just going to float on faith. So it was almost like a human being had, just like we said before, there are people who are great in esoteric Torah and people that were great in extra Torah, in Torah law. So too, in the Jewish experience of soul and soul experience, you can either turn on your side and process everything through logic and reason and become a great philosopher, like there were great Jewish philosophers and thinkers who tried to understand and appreciate and know God through their minds, but the limitation of human logic. And then there were those who dismissed that because they were more in tune with their transcendental, simple, pure faith, and they felt that seeking a relationship with God through the mind and through logic is very limiting. And as a result of that, they shunned it. They thought it's dangerous and wrong. And maybe there are those who actually accepted both paths, a path of simple faith and a path of study. In other words, where my mind cannot explore, I will then flip on, and I'll go into faith mode. But wherever I'm able to grasp and understand, I'm going to turn my antenna or my mode. I'm going to operate more in a more human manner, which is through reason and understanding. But there was like kind of a separation between the two. And here comes Hasidism again. Anybody that's a student of Hasidism and studies Hasidism will, and if you're subtle and you're paying attention, you will see that something magical takes place in your being. Is that these two elements of soul begins to converge. What that means is that the utter irrationality of the transcendental part of your soul that's bigger than reason starts to make sense. That means the mind starts to accommodate and make sense and embrace transcendental ideas that are really much higher than logic, and yet the mind is not irritated by them. The mind is joyfully accepting it. And it begins like to make sense what is really insensible. And your emotions can experience powerful experiences that are way beyond the limitations of the human heart. Suddenly there is a convergence of the higher self and the lower self. The more transcendental divine self and the more immediate human self interact with each other. In other words, the higher spring of the neshama, the godly spring, the mayon in your soul is the spring of divine, that each and every one of us is plugged into a divine spring, but that divine spring doesn't remain transcendental, hidden under the big rocks of the superconscious, but actually the spring goes chutza, goes outside into the more immediate, daily, everyday experience. Also a convergence inside the soul. Before we spoke about a convergence in Torah, now we're speaking a convergence in the soul. And now the Rebbe takes it to the next level. And he says, within the Jewish people itself, there is the Mayan Jew, the spring Jew, and there is the Chutza Jew, there is the outside Jew. The spring Jew, the higher Jew, are the godlier Jews amongst the Jewish people. What I mean to say is the great, holy rabbis and mystics and tzaddikim, saintly people, but thank God our people have been blessed with throughout the ages. And then there is the rest of us, regular people, ordinary people. The Rebbe says, till about 200 years ago, till Hasidism came, there was a divide between the two. The sacred club of holy tzaddikim lived in isolation. They lived to themselves. It's not that they didn't have an influence on the masses. They had an influence on the masses. They did reach, and people would come to them. But there was always a space between. And the tzaddik lived in his own world, in his own reality. He didn't really have a language with regular people. If he tried to speak to the regular person, he wouldn't connect. When I say they wouldn't connect, of course they would instruct, but when he would instruct, he would instruct people in actual guidance of law, but he couldn't share his inner world with the people. There was no point of, so there was a separation. The Hasidic masters broke that barrier. Hasidic masters were, as we said earlier, on the level of prophets, saints of the highest levels, yet they had the ability to be able to. One of the things that happened in the Hasidic world, in the Hasidic circles, was that the great tzaddik opened up the doors to people. And that's what became what we call the bonding of the ordinary people with the tzaddik. It became like one symbiosis. It became tzaddik and ordinary people. The tzaddik was very involved in every aspect of the chassid's life. The follower of the tzaddik, those who subscribed to Hasidism, who allowed their souls the gift of Hasidism and connected to a tzaddik, found that they have a saintly person who hears them and understands their everyday concerns and struggles. And the tzaddik wasn't lonely in his own closed world, but he felt he has a support system from the ordinary people, the two of them. And what the tzaddik says, the Hasidim ran to fulfill with joy and happiness. It became suddenly one unit. If we're paying attention, what we should be noticing is one thing. The reason why tzaddikim could not communicate to the fullest with ordinary people, the reason why faith and simple, complete surrender to God cannot communicate with the intellect and the mind and the emotion. That means the human faculties is not able to receive input, or is not able to be infused with the amunah, with the transcendental soul. The reason why the two parts of Torah, the higher Torah, the esoteric Torah, the godlier Torah, remain separated from the law element of Torah. The reason for all of this is there's one divide, there's one element here, and that is big and small. There is the big ideas, there is the big tzaddik. The tzaddik is a big soul. He has enormous capacity for the divine. There are small little containers, small little goblets, small little cans, small little cups. It's a small soul. It doesn't have the capacity. How do you expect the tzaddik, a big, super powerful being, to relate to something so small? How can a small little soul accommodate and open up to such a giant of a soul? It can't. How can small ideas of Torah law, which are dealing with intricate small little parts of the finite little world, be receptive of huge cosmic spiritual ideas that are the nuance, that are the exploration of the infinite? It's two worlds. They don't meet together. How can faith, which is so big, it's coming from the neshama that's bigger than it's infinite, and for it can receive the infinite, how can that be channeled into to a small little limited mind that can only understand in a limited fashion? What is super big remains in the big realm, and what is small and tiny remains in the small world. And of course, the big influences the small, but cannot merge with the small. And here, my friends, is the miracle of the 19th of Kislev. The miracle of the 19th of Kislev is the fusion of both these worlds. The convergence. It's the miracle of Hasidism, really. But getting an enormous boost on the 19th of Kislev. On all these levels, unifying the tzaddik with the ordinary person, unifying the emunah, being fully integratable into one's intelligence. The esoteric, deepest secrets of Torah fully downloading and becoming one with the exoteric minutia of law. All of this fusing together. And the deepest springs of Torah being revealed to ordinary people on the street. How? What's the magic? What's the magic? Why couldn't we do it before and now it can? The answer is deeper than everything we said until now. The answer is what the Alter Rebbe unplugged on the 19th of Kislev, which this neshama came to contribute to the world, is one word, and this is more than everything we said. The Alter Rebbe brought essence into the world. What I mean, he brought essence, he exposed essence. Essence is not defined by anything. Essence has no definition. When we say essence, we mean the essence of God, the essence of the Torah, the essence of the soul, which is really all one essence. God's essence is the cause, if we might say. I don't know if the cause is the right word. For the powerful infinite lights that are emanating above and beyond the cosmos. above the infinite lights that are higher than the universe. Why is there infinite light? What's the reality of realities? What's behind it all? The fact that God is. His existence, when he projects, he can project infinity. Boundlessness, Ein Sof, without an end. And if there's a toothpick, what's responsible for the toothpick? How can the toothpick exist? Rambam says all of existence only exists from the truth of his existence. That means the essence of God is responsible for the lights that are Ein Sof, and the essence of God is the reality of the toothpick. It's one essence. The essence of God is the essence of the Torah, is the backbone, if we might say, of the most brilliant, divine, godliest ideas of the Torah. And it's also the essence of how you're supposed to tie your shoe according to halacha in the Torah way. You have to tie your shoe by first putting on your right shoe and then tying your left shoe and then tying your right shoe. That's part of Torah. If it's part of Torah, it's emanating from the substance of Torah. What's the substance of Torah? The essence of the Torah. So the sages tell us, for instance, if you learn Chumash, let's say even if you learn the scripture, there are verses in scripture that are like, wow, whoa, hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one. There's so much meaning to this verse, man. Right? You listen, you should take into your heart that God is the only force. The heavens above, the earth and the earth beyond. There's nothing. What a deep, profound verse. And then there is a verse that says that Esav married this one, and she was corrupt and married another or whatever. And it's a story in the Torah about I don't know what, the most seemingly unimportant information that we can possibly have. In the end of this week's Torah portion, there is stories about all of the kings of Edom and who the king was and who his wife was and who whatever city was. I mean, okay, fine. Ancient Edom had a city, had a king. Like, who cares? What kind of cosmic and deep secrets of existence are in that verse? One can dismiss it. But the sages tell us that don't weigh the Torah. It's all Torah. That's because of the Torah's essence. The Torah's essence is the essence of everything in Torah. The most inspiring verse and the most seemingly ordinary piece of information that the Torah is conveying, it's all Torah. They share in common is that it's Torah, and that's the essence. So until the Alter Rebbe came, the Rebbe says, this is the Rebbe's insight. Until the Alter Rebbe came to the world, since we weren't close to Mashiach yet, we weren't able to tap the essence of Torah. So we were experiencing the manifestation and the expression. So the manifestation and the expression is different. The manifestation and the expression of the esoteric parts of Torah is manifesting. The Torah is revealing itself as descriptions or whatever kind of descriptions we can have of the divine, of a map of the divine. And there's another manifestation of Torah which is completely opposite, and that is what? When the Torah is manifesting as a guide to physical life. Two manifestations of Torah, but when you're not realizing it's a manifestation of something deeper than that, it's this Torah and that Torah, and it's like almost two Torahs. And you don't have a bridge. But when what's opening up to you is the underlying essence beneath all of that, then the big infinite Torah and the small finite Torah are both expressions of the same being who's beyond infinite and beyond finite. And because he's the essence of both, he can make both be together at the same time. The impossibility can be that the big and the small converge. And that's true about the Torah, and it's true about our souls, and it's true about everything. To round it back now, to come full circle, so Hasidism, with the powerful lights that it brings to the world, the highest, deepest Torah, reveals itself in the darkest times. In other words, when the world and when we as human beings who are so bombarded with, we're so chopped, because it's a very choppy world today. So busy. We're so overwhelmed with all the social media, with all the stuff that are, with technology that is, and all this, and makes us so, it's like it used to be times where people had more time. They can kind of slow down life and meditate, and therefore kind of open themselves up to higher experiences. But today's days, because of this, the world is so quick and so fast, and so distracting. And take in that, with all that, all the exposure that we have to everything, which kind of wreaks havoc on our consciousness, our spiritual consciousness, which makes us probably the least worthy for holy, godly secrets. And it's precisely in our tiny, small little vessels that are privy to the highest, deepest secrets that all generations did not glimpse, or at least the regular people of all the generations did not glimpse. And now, this feast is available for everyone. The gourmet of the gourmet is now everyday food for everyone. How is that possible? Doesn't make any sense. But that's exactly where the essence expresses itself. The essence expresses itself is that this and this, which don't seem to have any type of they're not compatible with each other, yet they merge, because there's a deeper truth that accommodates both, or that not accommodates both, that is the truth of both, and as a result of that could bring the two together. That's why the Rebbe says the greatest the highest and greatest accomplishment you can accomplish is to bring infinity, literally infinity, an exploration of the infinite through the highest, innermost teachings of the Torah. For example, we have a podcast called the Elikus podcast, the Elikus channel. We're learning very, 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 very high ideas. Very, very, literally, it's a tour through the divine realms on the deepest, highest levels. And any person can find it on Spotify, and anybody across the entire world can. And you might say, Rabbi, isn't that a little too much? And the answer is no, precisely there. Is because when God's essence reveals himself at the time of Mashiach, at the time of the Geula, the essence calls for Where is it showing itself? It's showing itself in the fusion of opposites. So if I'm only teaching or learning, if only the highest, most sensitive, refined, elegant human beings are studying Torah, then yeah, they're vessels for it. Then that study is not capturing, it's not engaging the essence. It's engaging the light, not the essence. But when the spring itself is outside on the street, when we have a center for deeper Torah in Hollywood, how is that possible? Only God Almighty, who's omnipotent and can do anything, can bring the two together. So Yaakov is going back for these little jugs. And in these little jugs, he's what? It's almost, he's entering into the experience of Levado, Ein Movado, the highest, sublimest experience. While he's picking up his little 99-cent store jugs. And what that really means is that the jug, these little kadim, they're meant to be vessels for the Ein Sof. So then I'm thinking about all of this and saying, hey, is that not our reality now? That any physical gadget has infinite information in it? A totally inanimate object, something that's like a stone, a little bit of metal, a chip, a metal made out of metal. All it has is inanimate objects. There's no plant life even in it. Just pure inanimate object. I can talk to it. I can ask it any question in the world. I can ask it to explain to me the deepest mimer. I can pick any mimer, means any discourse ever said, and communicate and ask it about it, and it can give me a bunch of information on it. That's a mimer. It has the information of everything in the world. And it can talk to me. What is that? That's the impossible. That's not possible. And yet, this is our world today. Mashiach is here. There's no other explanation. The essence is revealed. The thing that has always been the least, with the smallest capacity, has the biggest capacity, far more than the human minds. The chutzah, the object, the stone, the has everything in it. And what we're watching it has now is just the beginning. Where it's going, with its boundless capacity, who knows? I mean, obviously, this is what I'm using as an example is it, but obviously not all of it, but definitely is a pretty neat manifestation of what we're talking about. And then all of this is what we're celebrating now on Yutaska. So what is the takeaway from all of this? Never feel that you're not worthy of secrets for the deeper Torah. And never make a judgment on someone else that they're not worthy. Don't make any preconditions. Teach, learn. And when the people will learn and share and hear, the most unworthy will become worthy. God is not relegated to any limitations. You can't. Ultimately, God is the truth of all of existence, and therefore, everybody and everything, every object, and every most minute piece of matter is ready to receive the infinity of God, like we're watching right now, in as much as we're already able to see it with our physical eyes. So this is exciting. This is Mashiach. May we merit to find the Ein Sof inspiration and the Ein Sof enlightenment, not just in the objects we are encountering, but in our own neshama and in our own soul and our own hearts. Thank you.